Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to break down a super simple but really powerful way to prioritize everything on your plate. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix, and it can seriously help you get more efficient and a whole lot more effective.
So let me ask you something. Does your to-do list feel like it's a mile long? You get to the end of the day, you're exhausted, but you still have this nagging feeling, did I actually work on the right things today? Yeah? Well, you are definitely in the right place.
Okay, so first up, let's just talk about this whole prioritization problem. Because, getting good at this isn't just about cramming more stuff into your day. It's really about creating a life that's calmer and way more focused.
And that's the absolute heart of it, right? I mean, the time you put into learning this skill, it pays you back big time. It's what helps you stay cool, calm, and collected, even when everything feels like it's on fire. And of course, it boosts your actual productivity through the roof.
All right, so let's get into the tool itself. And as it turns out, it comes from a surprisingly famous source. I think you'll recognize the name.
So that quote right there, that little piece of wisdom comes from none other than Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th U.S. president. But before he was in the White House, he was the supreme commander of the Allied forces. We're talking about a guy making unimaginably high-stakes calls, like, overseeing the entire D-Day invasion. And that simple idea, that urgent things aren't important and important things are never urgent, that was the bedrock of his whole method for cutting through all the noise.
And right from that single insight, the Eisenhower Matrix was born. Now, you might hear it called the urgent important matrix, but don't worry, it's the exact same thing. It's just a simple framework to organize everything you have to do based on those two key factors, urgency and importance.
Okay, so let's really dive into the nitty-gritty. How do we actually use this thing to sort through the chaos of our daily lives?
Well, it all starts with a super simple 2x2 grid. Picture it. On one axis, you've got urgency, going from low to high. And on the other axis, you've got importance, also low to high. And what does that do? It creates 4 very distinct boxes, or quadrants, to sort all your tasks into.
All right, let's start with quadrant 1. This is for stuff that is both urgent and important. These are the fires, the crises. A critical server goes down at work, or you get a last-minute request to prep a presentation for your biggest client. The action here is simple. You do it right now. But, and this is a big but, the real goal is to keep this quadrant as empty as you possibly can. Living here leads to burnout fast.
Okay, now for quadrant 2. This is the sweet spot. These tasks are important, but they're not urgent. This, my friends, is where the magic really happens. We're talking about things like long-term strategy, professional development, building key relationships, the stuff that actually moves your life forward. The action here isn't to do it now, it's to decide when you'll do it. You schedule it, you put it on the calendar. This is where you want to spend your time.
And get this is pretty wild. A lot of highly effective people, the real pros, they aim to spend as much as 80% of their working hours right here in quadrant 2. Think about that. That's how you stop being reactive, just putting out fires all day, and start being proactive, actually building the future you want.
Next up, we have quadrant 3. This one's tricky. These tasks are urgent, but they're not important, at least not to you. They feel important because they're screaming for your attention right now, but they don't actually move your core goals forward. Think about some of those emails, the ones that are urgent to the sender but have nothing to do with your main project, or that meeting you got pulled into just in case. The action here is simple. Delegate. Get it off your plate whenever you possibly can.
And that brings us to the last one, quadrant 4. This is the easy one, not urgent and not important. These are the black holes of productivity, the time wasters, mindlessly scrolling through social media, getting sucked into office gossip, any activity that adds zero real value. The action here has to be clear and ruthless. Delete. Eliminate them. Your goal should be to spend as close to zero time here as humanly possible.
Okay, so the matrix sounds pretty great in theory, right? But what about in the real world? How does it actually hold up? Let's do a little reality check and look at the pros versus the cons.
So yeah, there's definitely a trade-off here. On the plus side, it's just so simple and easy to use. It's awesome for getting a quick, at-a-glance look at your priorities. But that simplicity is also a weakness. For one, it's totally subjective, right? What you think is important might be totally different from what your boss thinks is important. And it doesn't really have a way to account for details, like how much time or effort a task is actually going to take.
All right, so with all that in mind, the good and the bad, what's the final verdict? Is the Eisenhower Matrix worth your time?
This is really interesting. So when you rate it, it scores pretty low on accuracy, like only 1 star, and that's because urgent and important are just so subjective. But it gets a perfect 5 out of 5 for adaptability. And that, right there, that's its real superpower. It's a mental model you can pull out of your pocket and apply anywhere, anytime. And that brings us to the most important point of all, really. The Eisenhower Matrix was never meant to be the one and only tool you ever use. That's not the goal. Its real value shines when you think of it as just one piece, one component in a bigger, more personalized productivity system that you build for yourself.
So, how do you do that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Step 1, learn about a few other methods out there. Maybe look into the Eat the Frog technique, where you tackle your hardest task first thing in the morning, or the Moscow method, which is great for projects. Step 2, don't think of any of these as a complete solution. Just see them as different tools in your toolkit. And finally, step 3, start mixing and matching. Combine and adapt these different components to create a system that is perfectly tailored to your work, your life, and your goals. And so, that leaves us with one final question, and this one is for you to think about. After everything we've talked about today, how are you going to separate what's truly important from what just feels urgent when you start your day tomorrow?